Welcome to 52 Weeks of Hope. This is where you get to hear how to feel happy, balanced, and worthwhile, how to make that lonely ache vanish and feel empowered, confident, and secure. I'm Lauren Abrams, and today we're talking to the one and only producer, author, dad, and for these purposes, coach, Steve Morris, founder of Coast Camp for Kids, the funnest place for kids to be happy over the summer. Coach Steve's overcome screaming sideline parents for over a decade and a lot more as a coach and a parent in the dizzying world of youth sports, raising his 3 kids with his wife, and finding that the world of backyard and pickup ball with your friends changed drastically. Steve authored a tell-all and funny warning to future parents, reminding of what we all want, joy in the process. Steve's funny never holds back what he's thinking and always makes you feel good about yourself. Welcome to 52 Weeks of Hope, Coach Steve.
Wow, Laura, I don't even know who that guy is. Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and I said, oh, wait, I have to go grab the book. Here's his book. Yep, what size balls do I need? Which is a fabulous title. Come on, who came up with the title for your book?
A wonderful mom named Abby Adams. It was in the early days of doing Coach Steve little kid soccer classes. So this is now almost 20 years ago. And just watching the kids bounce off each other because they were all 4 and 5 years old and coordination had not kicked in yet. And the parents were laughing almost as hard as the kids. Abby said, you should write a book. And here's the title. What size balls do I need? And I started laughing. I thought that is a title.
That is a fabulous title for the book.
Yeah. I had no aspirations of writing the book, but I knew that if I ever wrote the book, that was going to be the title.
Yeah.
And, 17 years later, after my kids graduated and then sort of aged out of sports, and I was sort of, left alone walking the dogs, and planning for the next summer camp, I said, maybe I should write the book. And I had a wealth of material, years and years of notes and emails saved and just anecdotes. Then it took the next year and a half, 2 years to kind of fashion it into a narrative and then, rewrite it a million times because writing is rewriting. And then it was done. And it really didn't sort of come together for me. It didn't really hit me until I saw the cover that a good friend of mine, who's a graphic artist, put together. And once I saw the cover, I said, all right, it's real.
Yeah, it's fabulous. I don't know who actually watches podcasts, but if you're on YouTube or something, and I'll put links to everything so you can see the cover of the book. So, but I'll back up a little bit. You went to Yale, you moved out here, you're a producer, you're doing commercials.
It's a completely circuitous story.
Yeah. How did you end up coaching kids and starting your camp? Because my kids, just as a disclaimer, Coach Steve, my kids went to the greatest, funnest summer camp, Coach Steve's camp, Coast Sports. And they talk about it. My son would not go away to camp. He went once and he still gives me a hard time about, you went away, you sent me away and you went to Tahiti or wherever I went. The one summer I've been allowed to go away. I have full custody of both kids and I've never been allowed to go away.
Anyway. Your kids were, built for camp.
Yes.
And it was, it was a very unusual camp. But I guess the story really starts with my going to camp. I was a product of summer camp. A couple of years, grew up on Long Island. So there were a couple of years at day camp and then went away for 10 years in the Adirondacks to a fabulous camp called Camp Baco. All the Native American names were taken. And this was just sort of the Balfour Amster Camping Organization. Awful. The acronym, though, Baco. And, there were so many kids from Long Island going to camp that Long Island rose a few inches above sea level every summer because all the kids were just shipped out. The parents just sent them away. So
I went to camp. I mean, my greatest memories of childhood are my 3 weeks, not the whole summer, 3 weeks at camp. Yeah. I love camp on the Chesapeake Bay. Yeah.
I mean, it's the greatest. Everything I learned, pretty much I learned at camp, lessons of cooperation and teamwork and loyalty, the power of community. All the fundamental experiences I had and were from camp. And my best friends today were my friends from, 50 years ago, 55 years ago. They're all still around. And my campers who I had when I was a counselor were all still best friends. But, you finish your time at camp. For me, it was when I was 20 and you move on into life. And I had always wanted to get into movies. It was kind of where I communicated best with my father. He loved movies. And, throughout the years of adolescence, when you're fighting with your parents, we could still talk on, oh, Adventures of Robin Hood is on. Let's go watch. And we'd sit there and we'd talk character actors like Alan Hale and, Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland, all these, but we could communicate that way. So camp is finished and I move on. And at Yale, I ran the film society. So I was very intimidated at Yale. I came from a public school in Long Island. Everybody there seemed to be from Andover and Exeter. And when I was a freshman, they all seemed to have a sophomore experience. So I was, I didn't know what to do with myself. So I retreated to the dark. I found the Film Society and worked my way through the Film Society, taking tickets until after a couple of years, I was choosing the films. And they were 16 millimeter prints, and I would get them and schedule them, and I'd watch them on my living room wall and then show them to the school. And it was the greatest. So I thought, oh, great, I'm going to go out to Hollywood and, be a film writer, be a film director. But then, my own personal reality of fear and anxiety kicked in, and I couldn't quite make the leap to going to Los Angeles. So I moved to New York and worked in television commercials for a bunch of years. But still, the camp spirit was still within me. And when I was in the Film Society, we kind of ran it like camp. And when I was working the commercials and traveling around the country to different places shooting, bringing the same group of people with me, all the time, it was like camp. And then moved out to Los Angeles and wanted to be a writer and had modest success in screenwriting, enough success to keep going, but not really enough to eat. But, just to keep going was what my first wife, Beth, helped me get out here. And then my second wife, Marcy, was with whom I had my 3 children. And the eldest, when he was 4, said, Dad, I want to go play soccer. And I said, great, let's go outside. And he said, no, not with you. I want real soccer. I want soccer with a coach.
So 4 years old. Yeah.
4 years old. So we found a class and went to this class, and the coach's methodology was kind of different from mine. There was a bit of screaming at the kids and intimidating the parents. And I was just like, whoa, well, maybe I can do this based on my limited high school experience a million years ago, where I
didn't grow up with soccer. I didn't know soccer until my daughter started playing. I was like, okay, it seems like everything's offsides. I had to learn soccer.
There you go. But so it was kind of coming into its own on Long Island. There was kind of the game of the immigrants. I mean, there were Polish and Italian and Puerto Rican pickup games on the weekends, but it really was just starting to get into the high schools. And the coolest part about soccer were the shin guards. When I was in 8th grade, the best part, they had just sort of invented Velcro and just put it on these little, foam rubber pads. And you just sat there the whole time going, and that was soccer.
Yeah.
So, flash forward 30 something years, my kid says he wants to play. We're in a class that I'm horrified by. And I said, well, maybe I can take these kids out and do my own little class. And so Evan and a dozen of his preschool friends came out to Barrington Park. And I had these PVC goals that I set up and a bag of balls and a whistle. And I, bought a bunch of books. I figured, let's stay 5 minutes ahead of the kids. That ought to be good enough. And we just ran around and had a good time at Barrington. And then they all started. Next fall was when they got to sign up for AYSO. So I signed up to coach AYSO, the American Youth Soccer Organization, and had a great time with my U6 team, which was co-ed at the time. And those kids wanted to be in a class after the season ended. So I had the kids from before AYSO. I had these kids. Now I had 2 classes I was doing. I had been trying to write screenplays. And after a while, the balance of working with the kids to going home, sitting home and writing just, flipped on its head. And I was just doing classes. And then an ex-partner of mine suggested, well, why don't we do camp? And having gone to camp and known, how difficult it really is to pull off a camp, I said, no, these classes are fine. He said, come on, let's do it. And so we put together a camp and I had it all figured out. We would have, the 5-year-olds would do soccer this time and the 8-year-olds would play basketball this time. And, we move around in the group. The first day there were 17 kids of all different ages. So how are you going to do a 5-year-old group and an 8-year-old group and a 10-year-old? So everybody just got mushed together. And you know what? Go where you want. You want to play? We put out the activities and the kids could go where they want. So we had soccer, we'd have basketball, we'd have arts and crafts, we'd add other things. And the camp evolved so that it just became this empowering episode in the kids' lives where, they weren't being told what to do. They could go where they want as long as they weren't bullying and they were being nice and respectful. They pretty much had the run of the place. And, there was a structure that was more invisible that they had a lot of room, but, we had control. Didn't seem like it, but we actually had control. And it kind of just evolved. And so the camp thing came back. So I loved camp as a kid, but, you outgrow camp, supposedly. And then I came back to it 30 years later, and that then became my life, camp and coaching kids. So I never really outgrew it. The theme of my life was baked in early, and I tried resisting it for the next few eras.
Yeah, I guess what's meant for you is meant for you. That's it. Yeah, and it'll find you. So you are meant to be Coach Steve.
It's been a major blessing.
Yeah.
Interacting with all these kids and families over the years. I mean, when I see kids now that I've had in camp since they were little, I see them at their various ages simultaneously. So I'm talking to a 20-year-old, but I see an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old. They're standing right in front of me at different heights while we're having the conversation. It's really kind of fun.
Yeah, my son's known you since since he's 2,
3,
and he's telling me,
2,
3, whatever it is, and he's telling me, oh yeah, I was texting Coach Steve to tell him where he's going to college and this, that, and you're telling him where to go eat and who he can know, and I mean that's just.
I have this enduring image of Brady because he was little, but he was unstoppable, and he'd be on the basketball court throwing up, 30-foot shots, but heaving it off his shoulder. He had that shot. And, the other kids were all kind of doing the same. And I kept saying, Brett, someday you're going to actually, shoot for real. And he said, oh, I'm always going to have this shot because he was deadly. He could make that shot. Yeah. But, you have these experiences that are so profound with these kids at their different ages. And it's been one of the, just the greatest joys of my life.
And for me, as a single mom with all those Brentwood moms, sorry, but it was, I never felt uncomfortable coming in there. And I can't say that everywhere I went, but never. You'd be, Lore. When I came in, it wasn't just the kids you made feel comfortable. I always felt comfortable. And that's huge for me. At that time when my kids were that little, there weren't a lot of single moms as far as I knew. There may have been, but as far as I knew from preschool and elementary school and stuff, I didn't know them. And I never felt uncomfortable.
Well, you were part of the family.
Yeah.
The parents were part of the family. The grandparents were part of the family.
Yep. Yeah. And so it was, that's huge too. Now, your book is not about this camp, though. It was about coaching the AYSO and everything else and these parents. And really, you're surviving coaching in that kind of a world and what you witnessed. And I would imagine there's some PTSD because now you're having to relive it and talk about it since your book came out in writing about it. And I know you write with humor, but there's the serious undertones also. Well, it's not even undertones. You're right.
I think I was lucky because I have a non-threatening personality. And so that if there was an aggressive parent, his, sort of energy would dissipate before it hit me. And I think parents gave me a lot of latitude because they saw their kids were having a great time. So I think that's the key. If the parents see that their kids are learning, they're developing, they're getting along with others, they're laughing, then, it's kind of disarming. It's hard to come at somebody when, it's ostensibly it's for their kids, but their kids are having a great time. So as far as PTSD, I was so lucky. I got to be a participant in a lot of horror shows, and there were a few, really difficult moments. I think my most difficult moments had to do with telling kids or parents that they couldn't be on certain teams at different times. That was probably the toughest, chore I had to do, because at that point I was the regional coach administrator, the head coach of the Palisades, Brentwood, Topanga region. And so there was a lot of administrative stuff. So I was, emails would be flying across my desk all day and night. I'd be writing emails 2 in the morning. But it always, even at the worst times, I always was able to kind of look at it with a bit of remove and see that this is kids' sports. There's got to be fun here. If it's not fun, why are we doing it? They've got so many years to be adults. All right. Why are we imposing that on them now? And, I ran my teams that way of, let's all do this together. Total inclusivity, parents, it was family. With all three of my kids, I acquired 3 sets of new best friends, because they just really, these are the people you live with while you're doing it. So it really came down to, from my point of view, providing an experience and then interacting with everybody on as honest a level as possible and doing it with humor, keeping it light, because that's what it was. It wasn't brain surgery. It was youth sports. And so in writing the book was kind of told in the format of a memoir, because it totally exploits all three of my kids and everything they went through. So there are a lot of, anecdotes. It's a roadmap for young parents getting into the game who, really, you get in, you don't know, you just figure I'm signing up my kid.
I have a friend I'm absolutely sending this to, because
you don't know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And it's not just that. I mean, her kid's young and, he's going to be a professional, this, that, and other. I'm okay.
Yeah.
And I kept
you've the right
seeing
attitude.
Yeah. Come on,
and they'll learn. They'll either learn, sooner or later, but they'll learn. And then the last part was, it's a rant against those crazy parents, because as I've gotten older in the program and the parents have gotten younger, it seems that everything has gone really haywire. I mean, it's just changed. There's recreational soccer and recreational sports, and then there are club or travel sports. And when my kids were little, you didn't really make the leap from one to the other until about the age of 12. There were a couple of outliers that would go at 9 or 10, but pretty much 12 was a line of demarcation. If you wanted more competition, you could sort of move on. Now, club and travel programs are taking 6-year-olds.
What?
6-year-olds with, 3 practices, sometimes 4 practices a week, with the same promises that we're a pathway to get your kids college scholarships. And it's disheartening watching it. And it's ongoing right now. There are a couple of,
With COVID?
Well, COVID. Okay, so let's talk COVID. So there was an enforced hiatus last March. Everybody just stopped. Now the AYSO just stopped. It went away. But the clubs, who have to pay their coaches and have to pay field permits, they needed cash flow. So they started doing Zoom, Zoom basketball, Zoom soccer, Zoom whatever the sport was. And it worked for a while, but the kids would start getting bored and the coaches were getting tired of it. And then around midsummer, when the regulations relaxed a little bit, they went right back onto the field, most masked, some not, most socially distant, some not. And they would, keep the kids in the program and the money flowing that way. And then in the fall, they started a lot of the Utah opened up, Arizona opened up, San Diego County opened up. And so parents were traveling everywhere outside of Los Angeles to go to get their kids in weekly tournaments, baseball tournaments, basketball tournaments, soccer tournaments, whatever there was. People were just flying into hot zones, flying into COVID hot zones. But throughout this, it was a slightly more relaxed, where there were family dinners and there was more bonding. And the great hope, or my great hope, was when we came back, that, parents would take a deep breath and go, wow, what a year that's been. I'm so happy that we're back. Let's take this a little slower. Let's pause, maybe not go back to the same program, maybe try a different sport. I really like those family dinners. And what the reality's been over the past month, as all these sports come roaring back, as it's been kind of a tsunami where they've come back crazier than ever. Really? More practices a week, more tournaments.
I know this is in your book, your hope and what was happening.
And my fear has been realized.
Oh, no. Okay.
So, I mean, back to 1 million practices a week. In high school, usually the club season pauses for the high school season. Well, now they're both doing it together. So you've got kids playing club and high school sports at the same time. and with not all that much of a spring training, as it were. So kids are getting injured. It's just the craziness has been amped up, and it's going to move on right through the summer. Yes,
And are
I know.
you're not coaching that anymore. You're doing your camp, right?
Yes, with LAUSD willing, I'll be doing camp.
Yeah.
Still
Okay.
waiting on the school district to let me know if they'll open the campus.
So when somebody asks you now what you do, what do you say? I run a camp, I'm a coach, or I'm both. What do you say? I'm an author.
I'm not really sure what I have been doing. What I've actively been doing for the past 8 or 9 months is making videos. I've kind of gotten back to.
You're
I want to
making
get into the
reels
film
and
business.
Insta. You're on TikTok now, or
Well,
what? I
TikTok
don't.
is coming, but
I
the
was kidding,
instant.
but
No, no, no. So here's what it did. So I wrote the book. We published the book in August, and in September I started making little 1-minute promotional Instagram videos, and I did 10 of them as Coach Steve's Commandments. And I would film them, write them, edit them, score them, and do them on iMovie on my phone and put them on Instagram. They were a ton of fun. I do one a week. And then I
okay.
finished the 10 Commandments, and then it was sort of Christmas season, and I put the Santa suit on, and I did a bunch of, Santa sports themed ones. And then come January, I was sent a video by a local soccer club. It was about an 11-year-old girl who they were extolling as the next professional superstar. And there were coach interviews and there were professional interviews, and you saw her running, and she was with her teammates. And it evoked a feeling of me of just this revulsion, that how dare they impose this on this poor little girl who was too young to know better. And yeah, oh, I want to be a professional soccer player. Dude, you haven't hit puberty. You got obstacles aplenty ahead of you, but everybody was just pounding all this praise on her. And I thought, you know what? I want to do a rebuttal video. And I came up with this character who is the most toxic coach alive. And his name is Dick Punch. It was the name of a friend of mine from New York from a million years ago. And Dick Punch has a voice like this, and he's got an eye patch, and he's got the worst advice ever. He's telling people, I mean, he's promising that he'll get little 4-year-olds into college and they'll become pros. And he's saying, if you're not kicking other kids in the teeth, then you're not playing. He's the total anti-Coach Steve. So I've made a bunch over the past couple of months of Dick Punch videos that are now also on Instagram and YouTube with the Coach Steve. And now I've married the two. I've got the rivalry between Coach Steve and Dick Punch going. So this is all actually leading towards my next book, which will be about Dick Punch. So it's the trial of Dick Punch, and it's going to talk about, how he got to where he was, and what the grand reveal that I probably shouldn't, but it's all leading to this big sort of, I don't know, cultural epiphany. So this one will be fiction. The other one was nonfiction, but it's all pretty much about the same themes of, parents, come on, let's have some perspective. Let's have some balance. Let's have some,
Lighten up.
lighten up,
Lighten
take a
up.
breath,
Yeah.
take a breath.
Yeah. We need some.
So that's what I've been doing. I don't know what I am, but that's
Yeah.
what I've been doing, waiting to
Okay.
hear about becoming a camp director again.
Yes. When in life have you felt the most alone?
When in life have I felt the most alone? I like being alone.
That's not
Alone
how I
or
meant.
lonely,
That's not how I meant the question. I do too. That's not at all how I meant it. Yes. Or what do you? Let me put it this way: when you feel lonely, what do you do? Or do you? I mean, you're married, so
I'm married. I spend time with my animals, my dogs. I'll watch movies and TV with my wife and hang out with them, and spend way too much time reading about politics online and getting further depressed about that. I don't know. I have a very high threshold for loneliness and boredom. I think maybe it has to do with just an innate optimism that, even in the worst times, it just kind of just buoys me, that I don't really feel, I kind of crave that. I mean, people think I'm this grand extrovert. I'm a total introvert. I mean, I was the best quarantine guy going because my life was pretty much quarantine. I lived my life in three parts. There was summer camp, there was recovering from camp, and there was dreading camp, and then there was camp again. So when there wasn't camp and I had, wasn't coaching, I had graduated from that, I pretty much was by myself. And I'm very content in that milieu. And maybe that's because I have succumbed through my life to anxiety and, paralyzing, if not crippling fear at times. And so it's a rationalization that I'm doing well while I might not be. But, I take a lot of comfort in my friends, my family, my aging dogs. And so, I know you're going to ask about my greatest challenge.
If you had a dark period in your life, how you ever overcame it?
I think my darkest period was probably my early 20s when I fell in love with various substances. I had started late. All my friends were smoking pot in high school. I didn't pretty much start till the end of high school or college, so I had to make up for lost time. And after college, working in production and working in New York's version of Hollywood, there was a lot of substances around, and I partook. And so maybe my darkest or loneliest days were getting so deeply into it in my mid late 20s that there were times that I would pray in the middle of the night, please let me wake up and I'll stop doing this. I was actually one of the lucky ones because I guess I got so scared I was able to just stop. I know a lot of people that weren't, and some aren't here right now.
Yes.
So I think my darkest days were kind of my early mid 20s when I wanted to be a writer. I was working in production and I just was doing drugs because it was easy, it was fun, it was available, and everybody else was doing them too.
Yeah. So, and you just stopped.
I mean,
It's amazing to me. I have so many friends that were like you, that it was a phase and they just stopped. They got married, they got careers, they had kids, they went on with their lives.
well, the harder stuff I stopped. I, continued dabbling in the softer areas, for a while. But yeah, I guess I got so scared. I mean, physically scared that, when you're staying up for 40 or 50 hours and you're going downstairs to ask the doorman for matches at 3:30 in the morning, it's like there's something wrong here. And you try to finally go to sleep, but your heart is pounding, it's jumping out of your chest. You get religious. And even though the religious impulse passed when I woke up, it just the thrill was gone because I think the thing about substances and even a lot of life is the anticipation is the best part. Once you do it, it's kind of like, oh yeah. But the procurement and the preparation, and that's where the excitement builds. And then it's kind of, oh yeah, I've been here before. So, maybe I was able to turn that around and, in my mind say, just stop.
Yeah. I think ordering cakes from the East Coast is kind of like that now. You're the one that actually introduced me to those cookies. I now remember that. Those big black and white cookies.
Oh yeah.
You're like, you have to,
Froman's.
I ran into you when I was getting super.
I
so you
remember.
and you said, you have to get these cookies. They're amazing. And I obsessed on these cookies. I would go and run out in the middle, like I would just, and then I was like, they're probably better from New York. So I would order them from New York.
Look, a good black and white cookie. Come on.
Yeah, I know.
Best.
And so I've got, anyway.
Well, now I know where to get you.
But if that's the worst thing I do, which is the worst thing I do, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I mean,
Dude.
so be it. It's okay. I work hard for that. That's totally fine. So when you talk to people that say, don't be Pollyanna, parents are always going to be like this, they're always going to be yelling at their kids, there's always dads like that.
You got to keep fighting the fight.
And it's,
You got to keep fighting the fight.
What do you say? Do you just like say, oh, okay? Or do you fight them and say, no, I believe in it? Or what do you do with naysayers?
Well, look, there's always going to be a subset of parents that you cannot reach. And, I've gotten good over the years to realize who they are, and I just back off. But I mean, there have only been a handful of times where people have been so incorrigible, just I couldn't deal with them. Most people kind of understand. I had one great experience, or well, it was, over a bunch of years. So I had one parent that was such a gamer for his kid. He only cared about his kid. And just would always be screaming for his kid and cheering for his kid and lobbying for his kid. And his kid was the best thing on the team. And, we had to create positions for this kid, and he would try and leverage his kid, whether he was going to even come back and play the next year. Because, well, what position is he going to play and how much playing time is he going to get? And it was just so sickening. But in the spirit of community, we kept it together. And then the kid just stopped showing up. One year, he just stopped showing up. He had enough soccer on his resume that, it would be good to, get him into college. And he didn't have to come anymore. And I saw the dad in Brent Air Pharmacy probably 4 or 5 years after that. And we hadn't spoken since, the disappearance, since the evaporation of him. And the dad came up to me and he gave me this hug and he said, "Coach Steve, I totally apologize. I am so sorry. I was such an asshole. And I see it now. And what was it all for? What was I pushing so hard for? It was an evanescent experience. It was here, it was gone. I needed to appreciate it more in the moment. You kept telling us, just enjoy it now. It's not going to last forever. These are the golden days." And I couldn't hear that then. And I almost started crying. He was crying. I'm almost standing crying. You have the person at the counter going, "Your prescription is here." And the two of us are like weeping in the pharmacy. And it was moving for me. It was obviously, something he had thought about for a long time. So I try to counsel parents, have some perspective. You know what? Yeah, today's problem. Yeah, they're not playing forward today. All right. Or they only got one period playing forward and they had to play more defense. Wait till next week. Wait till next month. It's a long, there are 10 years. At the best, we get 10 years.
Read Steve's book. It actually says it so well and succinctly, and it's funny.
Better than that.
Yeah, I mean, really, your book is great.
Thank you.
It is. It's if you have kids that are in that world, it's a good warning, and it gives good solution, and it's good reminders.
Well, we try to keep it light too.
Yes, it is. It's funny. Light. It's very funny. I mean, because it's you. It is funny. So it's well done. And I was just doing a whole copywriting course online, and I was like, "Oh, you did all of this. There's no extraneous words here." I was like, that was good.
Yeah, I went through it many times.
I wanted to learn how to do headings on emails correctly and to learn different things. So I was like, I don't really have time for any of this, but I signed up for it. So I was like, let me learn it really quick.
Yeah.
The Jim Quick, kind of.
Well, but emails is a great training ground. I mean, before I had any aspirations for writing this, I excelled at emails. That was kind of,
You did. You absolutely.
I made sure.
Your emails were very good, but I know how to send legal. So
a little different.
Yeah. They're totally different. So.
Yeah. But emails were, I've actually thought for a while that that emails was going to be the epitome of what I did.
Yeah.
And I was fine with that. And then figured, all right.
Emails at 2 a.m. I'm like, why are you up so late? But before I get to asking you what your message of hope is, before we started recording, you listened to Sean's episode. You had a really good quote from there that hit you.
His quote that,
it was Sean Bradley.
Hit me like a gong was, if you're not living a life of design, you're living a life of default. And that hit me because, I've been living a life of default because I'd never had any grand master plans. I had the vague plan of I want to, do something in Hollywood. I want to make my mark in Hollywood. And, so I bounced into production, and then I bounced into trying to write screenplays, and I bounced into running a summer camp. Attendant to that is the notion of irony. So, irony is expecting something and getting something different that actually informs the first thing you were intending to do. The big example is O. Henry's Gift to the Magi. You've got the woman has this fabulous hair, and the husband has got a great watch. They've got no money, but they want to get each other presents. So she cuts off her hair and gets him a watch chain. He sells the watch and gets her brushes, and so she's bald. He's got a watch chain, but they're very happy. So, that's kind of irony. Well, the irony is that when I was Steve Morris screenwriter, I could never get any Hollywood powers that be to, really answer the
I
phone.
know where you're going with this. So yeah,
But
keep
when I
going. Nobody
became
else knows. Yeah.
When I became Coach Steve, all of a sudden there were people throwing guys out of the office if Coach Steve was calling to talk about their kids.
Yes.
I had one studio. I
that
had one.
yeah.
I had one
The
studio
famous
head.
people at this camp is like off the charts. Like I'd go drop off. And it didn't matter who you were though.
No.
I mean, I'd walk in, it was Lar.
Yeah.
It wasn't Coach Steve running to pedal to the famous people. It was everybody's equal. I love that. But go ahead, go with your
I preferred lore actually than to.
Yeah.
But I had a studio head once came to me and said, I've got people coming in to pitch Coach Steve stories to me all the time. And he said to me, and I told him, no, you don't know Coach Steve. And so the irony of here I come out to, sort of conquer Hollywood, and it kind of happened a completely different way.
Yeah.
Unintended consequences.
I love that. So do you have a message of hope?
I have a couple of them, if that's okay.
It absolutely is.
Okay. The first one is dial down the pressure. Dial it down on yourself. Dial it down on your kids. What seems unbelievably important and critical today, take a deep breath, and tomorrow or next week or next year is going to seem insignificant. And while you're going through this, if you're going through hard times, try and keep a sense of humor, a sense of perspective, and embrace the hard time, because guess what? The hard time now is going to be your legend. It's going to be your funny stories later. So, the misery that you're trying to get through now, and you tell that story in 10 years, there's going to, everybody you're telling it to is going to be doubled over laughing, as will you. So it seems like the worst that you're going through now. And there's some bad stuff. I don't want to minimize it, but if you try and take a deep breath and know that, okay, we'll get through this. And then down the road, this is going to be who I am and the building block of me. And it won't make it any easier going through what you're going through, but, you make it a slight bit easier that, you'll get to the next day. Another message is, just because, and this is maybe for parents of younger kids or parents of kids that are getting into college or getting out of college, just because someone may not have their mission or their passion or their life plan settled right away, doesn't mean they're not going to find it later. I think I'm an exemplar of coming to it, backing into it, zipping around it. Yeah, you too. Coming to it late, but then getting there and realizing it and being able to fully embrace it because of all the dreck you've gone through earlier, building up your strength, bolstering, your resources. So just because you don't know right away, take a deep breath. Don't, beat yourself up. Just keep moving forward. And, at some point you will get to that. And I think a last thing is, you'll never go wrong doing things or caring about other people. You will never go wrong. One, on just a selfish thing, it'll take you out of yourself. You'll get out of your own head, your own self-importance, your own obsession of self, doing or thinking or caring about other people. And then what'll come back to you, you don't know it, you can't expect it, you don't even want it. But just the gratitude, the love, the who knows what that comes back to you in helping others, and just the sheer beauty of doing it, you'll never go wrong. So that's kind of
those are amazing messages of hope. Where did you learn about doing for others and how good it makes you feel and all of that? Because I didn't grow up knowing that. That is something I've learned only in the last couple of decades, and it's what I do. But I didn't. I'm always amazed. I interviewed Rabbi Jill Zimmerman, and her mom taught her that. And I was like, wow, you grew up knowing that? I don't know.
My father always,
I don't know. Maybe they taught it and it was like, I just didn't hear it because I don't know.
I'm not necessarily speaking of community service or soup kitchen stuff.
I know that. I understand.
My father always said, be nice to other people. It doesn't matter who they are. Just be nice. And, I've always been that way. I mean, some of my best friends are the mailmen and the valet car parkers and the guys that deliver this and that, or do your cars or mow your lawns. I just, the custodians at camp are my best friends. I have the greatest relationship, but also I can get whatever I want because you go through them. But through the years, those are the people that I've also gravitated to. So I think once I started working with kids, it really came about, being able to work with them and help them and teach them. I got a huge amount of satisfaction from it. And just, the knowledge that I'm helping other people. So I don't know that it was so much, it definitely started with, my father saying, it doesn't matter who somebody is, just be nice to them, be respectful. And
No, that's great. I was just curious.
yeah,
I'm always wondering, like, where'd you learn that? I know where I learned it, and I didn't learn it until really, like I said, a few decades ago.
well, it comes from a neurotic place too,
Yeah. Okay.
because
And
it's a lot easier for me to give than take.
yes, I think it is for a lot of people. And I had when Stacey Gorin was on and she talked about she had to ask for what she needed when her husband got sick. And that was actually a big thing for her. So it was,
Yeah,
yeah. But I loved every message of hope that you gave. And I'm so appreciative of you being here today
This was the
on
greatest, Laura.
52 Weeks of Hope. Yeah, it's so good to see you even virtually. And one day soon we will all get to hug because we're vaccinated.
Yay!
I know.
Pfizer,
Yeah.
Pfizer.
Totally. I know. So we will put links to your book, eventually your second book. We'll stick that one up there too, to your little 1-minute clips and so on. For anybody that wants to reach Coach Steve. Thanks for being a guest today on 52 Weeks of Hope.
Thanks, Laura. This was awesome.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode and take with you Coach Steve's messages of lightening up, joy, and savoring each moment. Maybe even take a breath and wait for the right answers to come for ourselves and others along the way. Be sure to tune in next week for writer, producer, and funny man himself, Jack Hareguth. Jack talks about overcoming cancer twice, thinking his career was over, catastrophic thinking, and how to overcome it. And his new work, Never Surrender, about people in the entertainment industry who think the rug's been pulled out from under them and think everything's over when really everything in the end works out just fine. It's a great episode from an industry insider. And he talks about his new work, Never Surrender. So anyway, it's just so good. You don't want to miss that. If you're on Clubhouse, which did just open up for Android users, you don't have to have an iPhone anymore. Just go ahead and message me at 52weeksofhope.com and I'll send you a link to get in and invite. I've got rooms there on Tuesdays at 5 o'clock, on Thursdays, and on Saturdays at different various times. Just go ahead and message me at 52weeksofhope.com and I will send you a link. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to share the love, tell 2 of your friends, and please follow the podcast as well as leave us a positive review. I'm Lauren Abrams. Thanks for listening.